We are broadcasting live from the University of Utah. My name is Jane Osler, and I'm going to be facilitating this discussion today. But TechTalks is a place where we improve EMSC by learning the tools of technology, and so we're all here to learn something new. And with me in the room today, I've got Eddie Zamora and Atim Effiong and Chris Hoffman. And we're so excited that they're with us today. They help us with sound and tech and presenting. It's really kind of fun to have them in the room together. And online, we have all of our fantastic EMSC state partnership representatives from across the country. So welcome. We're excited that you're here with us today. We are kind of showing you today just a little bit of Utah's beauty from national parks and monuments. Thought you might enjoy a little sneak peek at what it looks like here in the winter time in Utah. And we're going to just do a couple of group norms again today. Just a reminder that everybody's at a different skill level. Everybody is coming to the table with a different skill set, but you know, we're kind of all in the throes of annual data collection right now. So we're in the same boat together working with spreadsheets and with EMS agencies. And so participation is absolutely encouraged. If you have questions or if you have comments you'd like to make over the phone or in the chat box, feel free to do that. Be sure to click on or to press mute and not hold. We're sure that your hold music is absolutely wonderful to listen to, but during our presentation today, make sure you're on mute and not hold. We also want to be able to try new things. Stay open. You know, Eddie is going to go through some really cool things in Excel today. And if there's something you don't understand, remember that our recordings are sent out via link. You can access them anytime and go back over them repeatedly. One thing I did want to mention, if you remember seeing a calendar invitation, we do have our National Pediatric Readiness Project webinar happening tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be getting our EMSC managers ready for NPRP. It's right around the corner, and we're excited to see you there. So please attend, and if you didn't receive an invitation, please let us know. So I'm going to turn it over to Eddie now, who is going to teach us more about navigating Microsoft Excel with filters and the COUNTIF function. This is something I'm especially interested in because it's very easy to get lost in spreadsheets, isn't it, Eddie?
Yes, it is.
It's very easy.
And we're pardon our speakerphone keeps muting. So for those folks on the phone, we're keeping an eye on it. So we'll try to address it as it mutes again. So thank you all today. Thank you for the introduction, and let's get started. So we usually make a practice of sending some challenges. Sometimes we don't. Today, before we even get started on this, I would like for those folks on the phone and joining us today to try to find out what version of Microsoft Excel you're using. So I'm going to give everyone 59 seconds and see
and counting
and see if we can find that out. There's different ways of doing this, but the reason you would want to know what version of Excel you're using is because when you are searching for a specific issue that you're having or a specific feature that you want to use, knowing this on a Google search will make it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. So if I were searching for how to let's say how to filter a certain column, I can say filter column Excel 2013, Excel 2016. So it seems like Chris Grinder found out he's using a version 2016, and
quick.
Brittany Nichols is 2016 as well. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do it, and it might be the same way. So here I have one of the spreadsheets that I'm going to be using today. You would open up Excel, open it up to any file, and then you're going to go to the File tab in the top left. You're going to go to Account, and then on your right side, it'll tell you what version you're using. In this case, we're using Microsoft Office Professional 2019. This is how I did it. There are different ways of doing it. So now the second challenge, that we have for you today is figure out how to unhide and unhide columns in Excel. And I'm going to give everyone a guess 1 minute or so to do that.
Just give us a thumbs up in the chat box if you're able to figure that out.
Okay,
or if you've done it before.
And I'll now explain the rationale why that is important. Sometimes you get this nice export from Tableau dashboard that has all these columns, and sometimes you don't need those. But you can't delete them. So one way is to hide those columns so that you can make your spreadsheet a little easier to use. That's the main reason you would hide a column. Or maybe you need the columns for one reason and your other coworker needs it for another reason. So you might hide them for the time that you're doing that data entry. And it sounds like Mark is letting us know how to do it. So I'm going to demonstrate what Mark is showing here. Mark Minkler here. So I have a column here. This is this spreadsheet that I'm showing you is actually Mark's non-respondent list that I've modified slightly from a couple weeks ago. So thank you, Mark from Maine, for letting us borrow this. So as Mark said, you would put your cursor next to one of the columns that you're interested in hiding. Once you do that, you would left click, and what it does, it highlights the whole column all the way down. Then you right click and you're presented with some options. You're going to go all the way down till you get to hide. And the reason you'll know this works is that you'll see that it's D, E, and F is somewhat missing. So if you need to bring that column again, you put your cursor right in the middle, and it doesn't look like that on your screen, but it's going to be a long vertical line. You right click and it'll give you the option to unhide. And then you'll bring back that column. Again, it hasn't deleted, it hasn't left, it's just hidden from you so that you can work on it. Another way of checking if a spreadsheet has a hidden column is to highlight the whole document. Well, I'm going to show you this later, but you can highlight the whole document and then you unhide everything. That way you don't have any hidden columns that might be that you might be missing. So now we can get started with filtering. I first wanted to spend some time with reviewing those two challenges because they really do help with organizing and managing your data. So before we get into filtering, let's start with a non-respondent list. So the first step, when we've been doing annual data collection, we've been asking you to export a non-respondent list from our Tableau dashboards. And many of you have been able to do that correctly. When I've been on a call with a lot of my managers, I always ask them to convert their spreadsheets from a CSV file to an Excel file. So I know that we're going to be talking about filtering, but let's first just do that really quickly. So if I have a spreadsheet, what I want to ensure is that the file is actually saved as an Excel file. So as you can see here, this file is a CSV file. There's nothing wrong with a CSV file. It's just you can't add highlights, you can't preserve like any bolding that you do. So I like to usually convert that to an Excel or an XLSX file. For your purposes, I would say you want to save it in this one that says Excel workbook, and then you can add it to your desktop. And then I'm just going to replace it because I already have it on here conveniently. Okay, so that's the first step. We really want to make sure our file's in an Excel format so that we can use it. Again, for the exports that you're getting from Tableau for annual data collection and that you'll be getting for Pete's Ready, they'll probably be as a CSV. There's no problem with that. It's just that it doesn't preserve any of the highlighting. The next step that I take when you're working with a file is really making this a little easier to read. As you can see here, some of the columns are not, you can't really see like what the contact name is, what the EMS region is. A quick way to do this is to put your cursor over the little box here on the top left. You click that once and it highlights the whole spreadsheet. And then you're going to move your cursor in between one of the letters, so A and B or B and C. I'm going to do it in between B and C. And like magic, it makes everything spaced out appropriately and easy to read.
I really like that. It makes it more functional so that you can see everything and not be guessing what's behind that hidden word there.
Yeah, and I see a question from Chris about when we were using mail merge. When I was working with him on doing mail merge, we were saving it as the newest version of Excel, which is XLSX. For some reason, the restrictions, maybe in his state, didn't allow it, or on his program. You can also save a file as Excel 97 to 2003 workbook. That's the older version of Excel, and that's going to work always because it's been supported for a decade, almost 20 years now. So you can always use that version as well if you're having problems with mail merge for some reason. Thank you for that comment, Chris. So there's a little bit of flexibility with all this, as you'll notice. So again, we just went over how to expand all by selecting all and then putting your cursor in between, and that makes it easier to read. And now we're going to do filtering. So for filtering, you're going to go to, I'll make it easier. You're going to go to data and you're going to press filter. And now you filtered. So that's really easy, but I'll explain why it's important and why we wanted to do this today. When you do filtering, it allows your rows to move with each other. And I'll try to demonstrate what that concept means. So let's say that we're looking at Livermore Fire Rescue. Livermore Fire Rescue has a contact email that is bguild@southportland.com. If I filter, and what filtering does, it allows me to sort a spreadsheet in 3 different ways. I can sort it by A to Z, so alphabetically from A to Z, alphabetically from Z to A, or to sort it by color. So in this instance, I'm going to use A to Z. If I filter A to Z, everything moves based on the agency name. So I'm going to go down and find Livermore Fire Rescue. Where is Livermore? There it is. There's Livermore Fire Rescue. And if you follow my little cell, you'll see that B Guild South Portland has also moved. When you don't have filters set, that's not going to happen. Your spreadsheet's going to get messed up, and that's when you might be contacting the wrong person. You might be sending it to the wrong email. So filtering is really important as you work with a spreadsheet. Let's say that you end up adding another column here for another field that you needed. You need to make sure that that column is also filtered, or it's not going to move along when you move everything else. Thank you for those instructions, Adam. I think those for writing them down. So that's why you would that's the rationale why we think filtering is important. Now there's the 2 other examples that we have on here is the Z2A, which is just flipping the agency name over. And then there's the sort to color. Let me show you how sort to color works. So let's say that I was just interested. I'm gonna sort A to Z for EMS region. Let's say that I was just interested in the agencies that were based in Kennebec Valley. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mark. I'm gonna go to home and I'm gonna select the highlight function. Now what I can do is I can go back to my filter button and I can sort by color, and now that yellow's gonna come up. That means that it's gonna prioritize how it organizes that whole spreadsheet based on Kennebec Valley. So that's a really cool feature to organize data that maybe needs more of your priority when you're working through a spreadsheet. The other way, now this is the part where I make it more complicated. So let's say that you want to work with Kennebec Valley, but you're like me and you get distracted really quickly. What you want to do is you just want to focus on Kennebec Valley. In order to do that, you would go again to this button, and then you have something called filter by color. Filter by color, I'm going to click it to see what happens. Gets rid of everything else and allows you just to focus on Kennebec Valley. Again, your data hasn't deleted, everything is still there, it's just filtered down.
I really like how clean that looks, Eddie, and it really pops against everything else. Makes, doing the work of a spreadsheet that much easier because you don't need all of the accessories.
No, and we have some of agencies that have 600 EMS agencies. You have a big list, so you want to try to simplify it.
And it's still there.
It's still there. So I'll show you how to bring it back. So so there are a couple ways to bring it back. If you know that you have only filtered on this what we call column G on EMS region, you can go here and there's a button that says clear filter. If you click that, it's gonna make everything go back to the way it originally was. So I'll do that. Oop, there it is. And now it's back to how I organized it earlier. Oops, yeah, magic. If another example that we use a lot is when we're working with spreadsheets is to identify or to work on missing values. So I'll give an example of how I use filtering pretty often, and I know that Braden, who just walked in, also uses it a lot. So, hi. So here are a couple EMS agencies that are missing some emails. And Mark, you have emails for these. I made them up. So these are missing some emails, and I'm trying to get these done because my TA keeps bugging me. So I'm highlighting them so I can remember where they are. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to use that same either sort by color or filter by color. Remember, if I sort by color, it's going to put them on the top. So now I sorted by color, and I can I can quickly identify those missing values so that I can work on them. Or likewise, if I get distracted like Eddie, you can filter by color, and you can just have those ones that you're working on, so that you can kind of move forward with that spreadsheet. Finally, where I think a lot, like when I first started working with Excel, where I would get nervous was whether I would take this back to the original state. So one thing to remember is to always create versions. If you're going to be extensively working with a spreadsheet, create an earlier version that hasn't been modified. I like to date it. Say today is 227. We'll call that version 227. That's the original version, and then I'll make a new version for anything that I'm doing. Right here, really we're not changing anything, but if you want to go back to the original state, you go to data, and there's a button called clear. Clear removes any filters that are on the spreadsheet, and I'll show you what that does. It takes it back to the original state. And for our purposes, I'll also remove the highlights. So I'll use the button that we used earlier where you select all up here, and then I'll go to home and I'll do no fill. So that'll remove all the highlights. So the spreadsheet is now in its earlier state. That is filtering in filtering in 10 minutes. I'm going to show you, I have about 10 minutes, I believe. So I'm going to show you the COUNTIF. For the COUNTIF statement, we are not going to go in depth. I'm going to move a little bit fast, but remember, this is recorded. You can always call one of your TAs, and we all do this pretty often, so we can sit down with you and try it for you. So the COUNTIF statement is helpful for different reasons, but the way that we use it is so that you can count cells that meet a certain criteria, like a date, a time, or a number. The example that I'm going to be using, which happens a lot, is you get an email from your TA, and he or she tell you that you have about 6 or 7 agencies that need to be corrected. And you might want to double check that against another spreadsheet that you have open. So here's the example that we're going to practice with. Here's some agencies that are mismatched. We've told Mark that these agencies have incorrect emails, and he needs to go and correct these this list. To make it a little easier, we're going to use the technique that we learned earlier. We're going to expand all. And now we can see that these are the emails that we have to work with. Now, we know that the portal ID is what we call kind of a unique identifier. The portal ID is important because it's only one agency can have that ID. And in most spreadsheets that you'll encounter, there's something very unique about a particular row that you can use as a reference. So we call it a reference ID, unique ID, and that's what we're going to use to try to compare this list with this really big list. So for this example, we're going to create a new column next to the portal ID. We'll put it here, and we'll call this comparison or something. We'll just give it a name, so we can have a name for that. And now we're going to enter our formula. For this one, the formula is COUNTIF.
The equal sign always in front of
Equal
COUNTIF?
sign and COUNTIF. Yeah,
Okay.
equal sign starts a formula or starts a function. And then we're going to say parentheses. Oops, parentheses. And then you'll see, and you might not be able to see it on your screen, so I'll say it out loud. You'll get a statement that says range and criteria. Range is where you're going to define the cells that you want to count or the cells that you want to compare to. So as I said earlier, we're curious to see where these EMS agencies are located in this big spreadsheet.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So we're gonna go back to our agency and we're gonna highlight those rows, those portal IDs. And you might not be able to see it, and I can't make it any bigger, but on the top here, you'll see that the formula wrote itself. I didn't do any of that. It's a bit of an automatic process. So the next step is we're going to put a comma, and then it's going to ask me to put the criteria. For the criteria, you're going to enter the cell that you're comparing it against. In this case, I'm first going to compare it against C2, which is that first portal ID. So I'm going to put C2, which tells it which portal it is. B2, sorry, thank you. And then I'm going to close it, and in order to make it a true or false statement, which is a way of saying which is a way of the system telling me, is your statement true or is it false, I'm going to make it equal 1. And there we go. We have our formula written here that says equals false. That's telling me that when the system looked at portal 14306, it didn't notice it here. And you can see here that it's not here. There's no 14306.
So false means that there's no connection.
There's no connection between both spreadsheets.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to make this formula basically the same all the way down. And the way to do this is to put your cursor right in the edge and drag all the way down.
Tiny little square box on the very, very bottom right-hand side.
Exactly, the tiny little box. And you'll see here that if I drag this down, that the only thing that changes is that number that we're referencing. Here it's B2, B3, B4, B5. In order to make sure that your formula worked, which is you always want to check, is let's find a true example. So if I go all the way down, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit here. If I go all the way down, I can see that I received a true result for Ashland Ambulance Service. Oopsie. Ooh, it's gone. There it is. So we received a true for Ashland Ambulance Service. So let's double check that name and that portal ID. It's 14080. And it's Ashland Ambulance Service. So we're going to go back to the agency that we're matching against, and there it is, Ashland Ambulance Service, and it's 14080. So now if I were going to clean this list, what I would do is I would just highlight this page, highlight this row, and I would maybe highlight my other true as well. And now we're going to go back and use the skill that we learned earlier. We're going to maybe find I didn't show you this earlier, but you can actually select true or false. So I'm going to select all the trues. And now I have the 4 true examples, which are the same examples that are on the other side. But now here I can change the email and correct it on this list.
And you can highlight them, and they'll be highlighted on your main list. Remember, that information's not gone.
Exactly. So.
But you highlight it, and you know exactly where it's at.
Exactly. So I can select everything again, and now I can use. I've highlighted them in yellow, so I can now sort by yellow, and they'll come to the top. So there's multiple ways of organizing this. I think we have a question from Chris Grinder. Can you read it?
It says, can you just do Control F and copy and paste the portal ID you're looking for?
Yes. Yes.
You have a list of 100 comparing to a list of 1,000.
Yes, you certainly can. And in this list, we're only talking about 4 examples. In some instances, like I was working with someone else where they had 70 agencies that they needed to look through, and they had a list of like 650 or 700. So it's really not efficient. It takes too much time. But yeah, the way I would use this is if you work for a state and you have the licensing database, you're going to get an export of their list every year, probably, and you're going to want to compare against the list from the contact list management system. And you doing this kind of function is really going to save you some time in identifying duplicates and also identifying agencies that you don't have and adding them to the contact list management system.
Yeah.
You could, if everything was in the same format, like an email and all that, you could even do this formula. You could even do this formula and compare the emails from Image Trend or whatever database your state uses to the emails in the Clems download, and it would tell you this one is different, this one is the same, this one is the same, this one is different. So it could help highlight which ones are different and you need to look into.
Yeah, so Braden, in case the group didn't hear him, saying that you can also use this if you're doing an export from Image Trend and use the email as the reference ID to find out which ones are the same and which ones are different, since the emails are sometimes consistent across the board. We have 2 minutes left, so I am going to stop here. Again, this is recorded. You can always follow up with your TA or myself, and we can assist you further with this.
Well, I'm excited, at the prospect of being able to practice this with a lot of different lists, to be able to kind of feel comfortable with the idea that my data is always there, and that I'm the one that's kind of in control of how I'm viewing things, seeing things, isolating different things to meet my needs. And this will be really helpful, I think, continuing forward with the annual data collection as well as for the National Pediatric Readiness Project. So if you joined us a little bit later, just a reminder that we have a webinar that's going to be happening tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to help all of our EMSC managers get oriented to kind of what's happening with next steps for MPRP. And we are excited to keep Tech Talks going forward. If you have ideas or suggestions or things you'd like to see in Tech Talks, please feel free to mention it in the chat box. You can email me at jane.osler@hsc.utah.edu. If you didn't receive a calendar invitation, you found out from someone else, please let me know. I can send you out a calendar invitation as well. And thank you so much, Eddie. We really appreciate this awesome tutorial in Excel. Thank you, Mark in Maine, for letting us use your list. It's really great to kind of see this in practice, and we hope you take the challenge, find out what version of Excel you have, play around with the hide and unhide functions there, as well as COUNTIF and filters. And we hope to be able to see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.